Now we are going to see how we are going to connect the demand curve with the ISLM model, okay? So here is going to be the graph for the demand curve, and the demand curve is going to be that curve in which we are relating the price with the production or the aggregate demand, okay? So here we are going to have, given each possible price, the level of production that is an equilibrium in the good market, okay? And what is the thing that we have here? Well, this is the typical ISL model as we saw in class. So here we have that graph where here is the aggregate demand versus the level of production. We have an imaginary curve, a 45-degree line. Why is that good? Because this curve is giving us all the value of aggregate demand, which is equal to the level of production. And if you remember, that is an equilibrium in the good market. So always that the aggregate demand is equal to production, we are in an equilibrium, at least in the good market, okay? Because if the aggregate demand is higher than the level of production, that is not an equilibrium, and vice versa, okay? It's neither an equilibrium. So the thing that we have here is the actual aggregate demand, because sometimes it can be a little bit confusing talking about aggregate demand here and aggregate demand here. Sometimes in some books you can see that instead of talking about aggregate demand, they say that it's the aggregate demand of a hypothetical good called C, and then instead of putting aggregate demand, they use double C, which is the name of this curve, which is in fact is the aggregate demand, okay? So the thing that we have here is the aggregate demand. The equilibrium point is that one, the one that is crossing this 45-degree line, because that means that this value, the aggregate demand value, is equal to the level of production, right? So here we have the graph for the ISLM curve. Here is the interest rate, here is the level of production, and here we have the money market. Okay, so I'm sorry because sometimes I use the nominal, others the real interest rate. Well, you can use the one that you decided, but it's interest rate at the end of the day, okay? So here we have the money market. So this is the supply of money, the demand of money. Let me talk about a little bit the IS curve, just to remember a little bit what is behind that. So here the thing that we have is all the level of outputs of the economy that is an equilibrium point. So the level of production that is in equilibrium for any possible interest rate. So that means that if you are observing a change here in the good market, because the IS is for the good market, not the money market, okay? So the IS is the money market, the equilibrium, the quantity of equilibrium in the money, in the good market. So if you see any change here, so in the level of production, given a change in the interest rate, the thing that is happening is that you are moving along the curve. So if the level of production increase because the interest rate decrease, that is a movement along the curve, okay? But if the level of production that is generated here is changed because any other things that is not interest rate, in that case, the whole IS curve is going to shift, okay? Now let's talk about the LM and its positive relation between interest rate and production. Here we are talking about the money market. So the thing that is determining the money market is not the level of output of the economy, it's the interest rate. So the thing that we are observing in this ILM curve are all the interest rate, you see interest rate that are an equilibrium in the money market for any possible level of output, because here we have production, like here, here, and here. So we are going to get the interest rate that is an equilibrium for a given level of output. If we observe a change in the interest rate that is configured here, if this equilibrium changes the value of the interest rate, and that is because a change in the level of production, then we are going to move along the curve. But if the interest rate of equilibrium changes because any other variable, in that case, the whole LM curve is going to shift. Okay, so it's really important to make clear the difference between a movement along the curve and a shift of the whole curve. So always that you see a change in this interest rate, you must wonder why is that. If it's given a change in the level of production or is because of a different reason. And here again the same analysis. So any change in the level of production, why is that? It's because interest rate movement along the curve. It's not, it's because a different variable. In that case, the whole IS is going to move. So now we're going to see the analysis. So, when the prices increase, we are going to see how that is going to mean a reduction of the aggregate demand, okay? So this is the gold graphic, but here we have the other that we are going to use to see that actually that relationship is just negative, okay? So this is going to be a little bit complicated. So at the end, with this curve is enough, but I want you to understand what is behind, okay? So we can do this using 3 different ways, but here just 2 because we are assuming, as I said, that this economy is going to be closed. So we are not going to talk about the competitive effect. Also, we can then use the welfare effect. The money that you have, the wealth effect. But we are going to do, instead of doing that, we are going to do it by the effect in the money market, so the interest rate. And this is only right, or it makes sense when we are facing an LM curve like this, so with a positive relationship between interest rate and production. Always that we have an interest rate that is horizontal, it doesn't make sense trying to see the effect of prices in the aggregate demand through the interest rate, okay? Because in that case, the thing that we are actually observing is how the central bank of that economy is just focusing in one interest rate. So that means that's why the LM is just horizontal, just one is valid just in one interest rate. And that is because in those cases, the thing that we are observing is if anything is going to change, anything in the money market, the central bank is going to compensate that effect. So if we have an increase of prices, so the real money supply is going to decrease, but then the central bank, the thing that is going to do instantaneously is increasing the money supply to compensate that, and then go back and get the same interest rate as before. And that means that we are not going to see any effect in the aggregate demand, because the effect of the aggregate demand observing the interest rate effect is through the interest rate by the investment. But if this variable is not changed, so the investment is not going to change, and this is the part of the aggregate demand that is changed when we are observing that. So we are going to do this analysis, which is the one that is probably the most used, but because we are focusing on this kind of LM curve, okay? So said that, we can start. So the first thing that we are going to see if the money supply is going to decrease, the real money supply. So we are going to start in the money market, sorry, because this is in Spanish, but it's the money market, okay? So you can put money market. So when the prices increase, the real supply of money is going to decrease. Let's say a point like this, okay? MS divided by the new price, which is higher than the previous one. So eventually this is going to mean, an increase in the interest rates of equilibrium, okay? So lower supply of money, higher cost of money. How we are going to see, because here we are observing a change in the interest rate of equilibrium, isn't it? So, and always that we are talking about the LM curve is because we are talking about the interest rate of equilibrium. So let's see how it's going to be the effect of this change in the money market in the LM curve. In this case, the level of production, the original one, didn't change. So, because the thing that have changed is the price, not the level of production. Here we don't have the level of production. Of course, the level of production eventually is going to be affected, but now it's not affected. So, given that level of production, the original one, now the new interest rate is going to be higher. So that's why I'm going to put a point here. That is one of the points of the LM, but we have that given any, not just this one, any level of production now, because the price is higher, we should expect a higher interest rate. So it's like the whole LM curve is shifting. Okay, LM, right? But also, I know that this is going to have an effect in the good market. So after this, I have to go to the good market and see what's going on with the good market, which is this one. Okay, and always that I do anything, I have to be really, really careful. Okay, in fact, I should start thinking about the LM. The thing that I'm going to observe now is a change in the money, in the good market, right? Because now the interest rate is new. But also, I need to understand why is that change in the level of production in the good market. And the change is coming from a change in the interest rate. So, be careful, here we have production and here we have interest rate. So the thing that we are going to see or observe is not a shift of the IES curve. Instead of that, we are going to move along the IES curve. Okay. In fact, more precisely, the thing that we are going to observe is because the interest rate is increasing, the LM is telling me already where is going to be the output of equilibrium in the good market. In fact, it's going to be this one, right? Because that is the IS curve. So that is giving me like a help to do a good graph. I know that here is going to be the new level of production. So I can go here, stop here, because this curve is for the 45 degrees, so where there is an equilibrium. I know the level of production is going to change. In fact, we are going to talk about that in a moment. Now let me use also the blue one. Okay, this is the new demand, aggregate demand of that good. You can see that now the quantity demanded is lower. Let's see the whole effect here, not just with the graph, but with the parables. So higher interest rate means lower investment, right? We already know that this relationship is negative when this is positive. So lower investment means lower aggregate demand. Less aggregate demand means less production. Less production means less disposable income, so less consumption, but also means less investment, which means lower aggregate demand, and so on. So we should expect that the level of production is going to decrease, and that is in fact the thing that we are observing, given this hypothetical new interest rate that is the one that is configured. Did we finish? Not yet, because this is going to have like a second effect, okay, or sequence of effects. In fact, when the level of production decreases, this is going to have an effect in the money market. How is that? Because the demand of money, the demand of liquidity depends on the level of production. But now the thing that we are going to observe in the LM curve is how the change of production is going to change the interest rate of equilibrium. So this new interest rate that we are going to find is propagated by the production. So that means the LM curve is not going to shift anymore. We are going to move along the LM curve. In fact, the thing that we are going to do is, if this was given the initial level of production, we know that the first point was this one, right? A new interest rate. But because the level of production now is higher, we should expect a lower, the new level of production is smaller, we should expect smaller demand of money. So we are going to move along the LM curve from this interest rate with this level of production to a lower interest rate. And that is good. I know that here is going to be the final equilibrium. So that is going to help me to draw the new demand of money, which is going to have this interest rate of equilibrium. So let me see if this is the new supply of money. So here is going to be the new, oops, sorry, doesn't, let me see with this one. The new demand of money. So you see that is smaller, okay? So perfect, sorry, should be over here, but this is smaller. Why stop here? Because I should go until this point, right? This is a new level of production, but I'm going to stop here because I know that at the same time, the reduction of the, the reduction of the interest rate, because initially it grew a lot, but now it's reducing. So that means that at the same time, I'm going to observe that in the good markets, the reduction of the interest rate, though it's going to be higher than the initial one, right? This was the initial one. This is going to be higher, but not so high. And that reduction at the same time is going to generate higher, the reduction of interest rate is just the opposite to this, right? Higher investment, higher aggregate demand, and so on. So we are going to move along the IS curve. The reduction of the interest rate is going to generate a new level of output. So I'm going to this place. And here is going to be the final result. So this level is going to be the final level of production. Let's translate that to this 45-degree curve. So I know that initially the aggregate demand decreased a lot. Now because the interest rate is decreasing, the aggregate demand is going to go up a little bit. And this is going to be the final level of output. So now I have the whole analysis done, and then I can go here to my graph and say, okay, let me see, this is the final level of output. I can put that, given a new price, which is, I know, is higher than the initial one. Here is the new point of equilibrium. So that is for an increase in the price, but we can have for a higher increase, lower increase, for all the point in general. I know that the aggregate demand curve is going to be in this way. So a negative relation between the aggregate demand and the price, sorry, because it should be nicer, but it is not. Okay? Now we're going to see what is behind of, this is a movement along the curve, when this curve is going to shift, okay? In fact, we don't need to do the whole thing again. Why? Because we already know how is the mechanism, so you can repeat it to understand the whole mechanism very well, but always is in the same terms. We are going to have a variable that is going to change, and that is going to have a consequence in the money market, in the good market, and eventually in the IS curve. Now we're going to see an example in which the aggregate demand is going to shift. So this can be generated by many variables, all of the variables that are different to the price. Just keep in mind that always that the price is changed, we are moving along the aggregate demand. Here, as an example, I consider a fiscal policy, more specifically expansionary fiscal policy. For doing that, we have three possible alternatives: the increase of public spending, the increase of transfer, or the reduction of taxes, or any combination of them. So now I'm going to choose just one of them, the increase of public spending. So if public spending is higher, we can move directly this curve to the right side, because I know that that is going to mean an increase in the aggregate demand. So that means I don't really need to do the whole thing. But the truth is, it's really interesting doing everything to see how it's connected the good market with the money market, and how it's going to be not just determine the level of output, which is going to be of course higher given the initial price, but also to try to figure it out how it's going to be the interest rate of equilibrium, right? So in fact, I can know how it's going to change in net terms the interest rate of equilibrium, because I know that higher level of production, because more public spending means higher aggregate demand, higher level of production. More production is more investment, also is more disposable income, which eventually means higher consumption, so the aggregate demand curve is going to increase and so on, because I know there's going to be a multiplier effect. That means also in the money market, I already know that that is going to mean eventually a relative or net increase of the aggregate demand of money, so the interest rate is going to increase, right? But if I'm not really sure, or if I want to see the whole analysis, the complete analysis, what's going on in the economy, in each market in a much more specific way, you should follow the step that I'm going to do. So though it can be a little bit confusing, right? But it's a good practice to understand the whole thing, right? So as I said, we're going to start with the good market. Why? Because public spending is in the aggregate demand, and the aggregate demand, the aggregate of that demand of that hypothetical C good is here in the good market. So I know for sure that this aggregate demand respect to the output now is going to be higher, because this is one of the elements that is behind of the aggregate demand of the goods theta. Okay, so I know that we are going to see, given any value of the output, now the aggregate demand is going to be higher because the level of production is higher. So I'm going to have something like this. 1. Now the next thing that I have to do is think about it, how it's going to affect this to the IS curve. Why the IS? Because that is related with the wood market. In this case, I need to think about, okay, what I am serving. I am serving a shift of the whole curve or a movement along of the curve. We are going to see a movement along the curve when the changes in the level of output, how is this one? The level of output now is higher, is provoked by the interest rate or any other variable. Let's take a look at here. It's because the public spending. So the interest rate didn't change yet. So given the initial interest rate, now because the public spending is higher, the level of output is higher. It's here. Okay? So the IS curve is going to shift completely to this point, right? So given this interest rate, the initial one, I know that the public spending is generated higher aggregate demand. So higher aggregate demand means higher output and so on. And the final one is going to be here. So my new IS curve is going to be here. Okay? Next step, see the effect of this new output in the other market, the money market. So the result is higher output. More production means a higher demand of money. And that means that this curve is going to move to the right side. Why? Because it's production, which is not here, the variable that is changed. So more production means a higher demand of money for any interest rate. So the whole curve is going to shift. I like to take as reference this one, this interest rate, because it's given this new level of production. I know that the new interest rate should be here, just because that level of production. Because just remember, always that we are observing the money market, you need to think about it, what is going to be the effect in the LM. Why the LM? Because there is the interest rate of equilibrium for any level of production. If the new level of production is Y1, the new interest rate of equilibrium is going to be here. Okay, I know that by sure. Because here I have the interest rate of the equilibrium given any change or any possible outputs. So I know that by sure it's going to be here, the new level of interest rate, given that level of output, okay? So that means that because the output is higher, the demand of money is higher. So let's take a look at this. Of course, here we are observing a higher demand of money, because now the new demand curve must be here, given that graph. And this is as if to the right side. So it's higher. Just keep in mind that here we have the real money. Okay? So it's to the right side. Next step. This means a higher level of interest rate. We need to know, or we need to go back to the good market, which is here, but also now at the same time, we are going to go to this market and also this market for the final step. In both cases, we are going to see that we are going to move along the IS curve and the LM curve. In the case of the good market, the increase of the interest rate coming from here to here is going to mean lower production, a lower aggregate demand, because higher interest rate means lower investment, so lower aggregate demand, lower production, and so on, because here is the multiplier effect again, right? So instead of being here, you are going to be in a point between the initial one and this second one, so we're there. I know that the new level of production is the equilibrium one is going to be in this new intersection. So I can use this to make the graph of the new aggregate demand of the good. See? So it's going to be here. So initially we have this, and now it's like going back, right? So the increase, let me see, it's like the increase, so the production is very high, but the increase of the interest rate means lower investment, lower aggregate demand, lower level of productions. So it's like moving along this curve. At the same time, because the level of production is getting smaller, you see, getting smaller, we're moving to the left side. That means that in the money market, the demand of money is not going to be so high anymore. Less output means less aggregate, less demand of liquidity. So an increase in the interest rate. Sorry, a decrease, because lower demand, lower interest rate. Sorry for that. So I know that eventually the level of production is going to be here. So that means that here is going to be the interest rate of equilibrium. So initially grows a lot and then decrease a little bit. Okay, so I know that it's going to be there. So that is going to help me to make the graph of the demand of money, which is going to be here, in between the other two. Okay, so in fact the thing that I'm observing is the reduction of the output, because now the output is decreasing in the good market, is going to generate a decrease of the demand that is going to generate a lower interest rate. So it's like going to this point. So that means that as smaller is the level of production, the interest rate of equilibrium is going to be also smaller, right? So here we have the whole analysis and the new level of production, which is here. Let me show you. That means that given the price, because I didn't change the price anytime, the new aggregate demand is here. So in general, for any price, because I did this for this price, but I get this analysis for any other price. In general, the expansionary fiscal policy is going to mean a shift to the right side of the aggregate demand, right?